Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe. Hope you're not too stressed on transfer deadline day. We are nearly there. The two deals, the two signings I'm going to speak about have not been officially announced yet, but it is quite late. I've been working quite long today on transfer deadline day for Football London. I think we can feel pretty confident I can speak about these players being Chelsea players, or at least just the idea of them being Chelsea players, and give you my thoughts. This long, at times draining, chaotic, crazy, up and down transfer window that was probably the busiest transfer window for Chelsea ever. And in some ways, that was not a surprise given what had happened with the change in ownership, the sanctions, how Chelsea were behind in their rivals, and the amount of work needed to be done. My overall assessment of the window, despite some criticism which have come up on deadline day, I think generally positive given all of those factors. The overall thing, and I don't think this is a controversial take, is that Chelsea do need a director of football, but we've been saying that for a number of years. But particularly with the way the final days of this window played out, and particularly the way sometimes targets came out of nowhere, I actually think that the players Chelsea have signed in the end, the final two, I think, are a little... You can have question marks over the final two, but I think the majority of the major first-team signings, I think, have been positive for Chelsea. I think they've been the right profiles. I think they're going to improve the team, and in some cases, hopefully offer Thomas Tuchel things that he did not have last season. Raheem Sterling, one of the best attackers in the Premier League over recent years. Kalidou Koulibaly, we hope, can be similar to Thiago Silva and kind of a veteran defender who can come into the Premier League and offer an instant kind of solution in defence. Marc Cucurella, an exciting wing back who, you know, in an area where Chelsea really struggled when their first choice options went down, and a player that hopefully can go up to another level. Wesley Fofana, a player with tons of potential, Premier League experience, and hopefully again solves a lot of problems in Chelsea's defence, particularly on the right side. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and of all the names I just didn't expect and didn't even get told today, potential alternatives, and how mad it's been. It kind of feels symbolic that in this mad transfer window we do end up signing a central midfielder, and that is Denis Zakaria, a loan from Juventus. We're going to start with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. I think people have ended up forgetting about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang by the time it actually gets announced because of all of the madness that's happened since then, and particularly the concern over central midfield, which is absolutely right, and I absolutely understand people's concerns about that, the way all of this has been handled in the final hours of the transfer window. I think you can rightly have questions over Chelsea's approach, but with Aubameyang, I've made my points before and my concerns, they have not changed with Aubameyang and his professionalism and the way it fell out at Arsenal, handing a contract to a 33-year-old, although it's not as steep and kind of as bad. And I think also the sweetener is Marcos Alonso going the other way. Of course, it's a deal that both clubs needed to do and wanted to happen. It kind of felt logically at this time of the window that there was a deal to be done, and the fee isn't ridiculous. Barcelona get a player they want, Chelsea get a player they want, Tuchel wants this player, he's worked well with him before. There is no denying that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has been a good goal scorer, and actually if you look at his record since he signed for Barcelona, I think it was something like over double figures in terms of league goals for Barcelona. Still looks like he's got a finish on him and scored a lot of goals in the Premier League. But I would say about this deal, I don't think it's going to be viewed in kind of a middle ground. I think there are going to be extreme opinions. Surprise, surprise about football. But there are going to be extreme opinions about this deal when it's done. I think either my hope, my dream is that Aubameyang enters the Hall of Fame of players who have swapped Arsenal for Chelsea, or at least played for Arsenal before. He's maybe taken a Cesc Fabregas journey, going to Barcelona and then coming to Chelsea. Of being beloved and turning into a player that people really like. I mean, Olivier Giroud is the most obvious comparison here. If Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang offers what Olivier Giroud did, I think that would be a good signing. If he offers, as someone pointed out, even though it was only a season, what Samuel Eto'o offered, we forget about him, it could be an alright signing. But there are obviously question marks, and that's kind of tied with Chelsea's attacking problems and Tuchel getting the best out of the attack. But I think about some of the combinations that are going to be there with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang when he does get fit, because obviously he's had a very harrowing week personally, you know, with an incident at his home being burgled, horrible, horrific, and you know, there was some doubt whether the deal were going to be done, and it is going to be some time before we see him in a Chelsea shirt. But hopefully he can get up to speed. Obviously, he knows the Premier League. Another player that has Premier League experience is quite clearly, even if you can look at the profile of Aubameyang a little bit different, quite clearly Chelsea have valued that in their dealings this summer with the majority of players they have brought in. So fingers crossed it works, and I think it kind of has to with the attacking problems we've had, and I just hope that Aubameyang rediscovers that form. Tuchel, the good relationship with the player, hopefully can be rekindled at Stamford Bridge, and as well, compared to older strikers that we've been linked to, like Cristiano Ronaldo, I think Aubameyang obviously is a lot more in the mould of what we need from an attacker. Although Aubameyang is not going to be dropping deep, getting involved with play, he has shown versatility within his career to drift a little bit wider if we need him to. But we do need players inside the box. That is a big problem. And Aubameyang, if you watch all of his goals for Thomas Tuchel, inside that box, basically tapping it in. If we can get that out of Aubameyang at this age, then happy days. We move on to central midfield. So Alvarez from Ajax, this came out last night, that Chelsea had put a bid in very late. We start focusing on that player. The player refuses to train at Ajax. This morning, it kind of a sign that something could happen. Chelsea were pushing, but because the Dutch transfer window had closed yesterday, I believe, there was no time for Ajax, despite all the money they've made this summer, to get a replacement effectively, and they did not want to sell, and that obviously has not happened. Alvarez looked like a good player to me. As I say, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on him. There are probably people watching this who know a lot more about him. But on the brief glimpses I got to see of him, and from people who, as I say, second-hand knowledge of watching him, absolutely what Chelsea have missed for a number of years. That's a real shame. And then there were other names touted about. But then out of absolutely nowhere, Fabrizio Romano breaking the story that Chelsea had gone in to try and sign Denis Zakaria, the former Borussia Mönchengladbach midfielder who moved to Juventus, has been struggling with injury problems. We'll get to that. On a loan with an option to buy, and that's what it is. He's completed his medical, as you can see on the screen now. This is the latest info. Chelsea player and Juventus preparing all the paperwork on deadline day. The structure of the deal is a loan with a 30 million option to buy, not mandatory, a potential 5-year contract, and Chelsea will cover 100% of his salary. Just going over here to David Ornstein, some more information in The Athletic. Zakaria started at Borussia Mönchengladbach after joining the Swiss side in the summer of 2017. He made 125 appearances for the club before joining Juventus this previous January. He has been in and out of the side since moving to Italy, playing 13 times in the league since his move. Chelsea are now potentially looking to facilitate his exit from Juventus just 9 months after he moved to Turin. I was a fan of Zakaria when he was at Gladbach. I remember doing a Let's Talk Chelsea years ago. I think it was 2019, 2020, speaking about Zakaria as a potential Chelsea target. This is when he was still at Gladbach. But the unfortunate thing is he has had a lot of injury problems. And I remember back then, I think he was injured. So this is where kind of his injury problems have started. And that is a massive concern. You cannot help but have a bit of deja vu of Chelsea getting a midfielder and trying to buy a midfielder permanently, not getting that player over the line, and then going for someone else on deadline day with a loan with an option to buy a very similar fee and some concerns. If he doesn't get hooked within his first 2 Premier League starts, then he's slightly improved. My big question about central midfield is that for years this has been a problem at Chelsea, and for years it's been an area that has somehow been forgotten about. I just find it a bit bizarre that Chelsea have waited all this window to then in the last few days suddenly decide. Thomas Tuchel, obviously, who's had massive hand and influence, who I could only assume trusted his midfield that he already had, to now go in for a midfielder, and it's too late to do a deal for a permanent player. Zakaria could turn out, like we hoped Sal would, to be a stroke of genius, or at least for a season can offer what Chelsea require. We hope that can be the case, and I like the player. I'm excited to see him play for Chelsea if he can get on the pitch. But that's where the criticisms of Chelsea's structure this summer are quite valid. A director of football, a clearer sporting structure of what the targets are, what are the priority areas, why are we buying players, which is not a Todd Bowley Chelsea problem. That's a question I've been posing of Chelsea for a number of years, but particularly in such a key area. It's a little bit irritating to me that it's taken the club this long, because I think we all assumed that it was just, if it was going to be a midfielder, it was going to be Frankie de Jong, and that's a Frankie de Jong to Denis Zakaria. I mean, that's a difference in target. So what's changed? I think maybe results and injury, but the injury problems in central midfield are not breaking news. They're not freakish. We know N'Golo Kante has injury problems. We know that Mateo Kovacic has injury problems throughout his career. So there is that concern. But let's hope Zakaria does a lot better than Saúl Ñíguez and he offers Chelsea what we need. And there are some people in Italy a little bit surprised that Juve have allowed this deal to go through on deadline day. So fingers crossed that he offers what Chelsea need. Because midfield the other night, if you haven't watched my review of Southampton, please go and watch it. Midfield is a big issue. But the final thing to speak about is, well, Ethan Ampadu is going to Spezia on loan. Glad for him. He done really well in Syria with Venezia last season. I hope it's the same for him this year and he'll get into the World Cup squad with Wales. Harvey Vale signing a new contract with Chelsea and going on loan to Hull. I hope that's a good deal for him as well. But we do have to speak about departure with one of the youngsters, and that is Billy Gilmour. Sold to Brighton for what is believed to be a fee of $9 million with no buyback. You're not going to be surprised. I'm not a big fan of us selling Billy Gilmour, purely based on the talent of the player and what he could become in the upcoming years. And again, a bit like the Mark Guehi situation and a bit like for Fikayo Tomori, I think that fee is going to look stupidly low very quickly if Gilmour continues on the trajectory despite the setback at Norwich. Under Graham Potter is doing such a great job, and Brighton are just so sensible with transfers. I think in the Premier League they're probably the shrewdest at the moment with their deals. And for Billy, it's the right move because, he was on the bench on Tuesday and Tuchel was saying after that he didn't have any options. That's kind of sending a message, isn't it, that, you're not in my plans. Over pre-season, when we thought that Billy was going to be one of those that could get a few opportunities, he was out in the US, but he was part of an academy group that was sent back home, or at least to the academy setup, which may have been in America at the time. And there were people surprised internally at Chelsea that happened. And the writing's been on the wall. I think some of us hoped it would have been a loan. It's a sale. It's good that Chelsea have got a midfielder in because we couldn't have let Billy go. I just personally think you can't let Billy go permanently and then not bring anyone in. That would have been awful. But with the talent that Billy had, with what he showed, with the potential of him becoming a bigger player, there has always been that kind of feeling, hasn't there, with Billy Gilmour, despite our liking to him. People bring this up, that with the feeling of inevitability around one target at West Ham in central midfield, where was Billy going to fit in? Did he see writing was on the wall? I think more so it's with the current coach and just he's not going to be given an opportunity. And we've seen with the likes of Tammy Abraham that you can go elsewhere and you can make a career for yourself. So I really hope for Billy, who I think is a really good talent. I think he's going to be under a brilliant coach with Graham Potter and Brighton, who have started the season so well, look like such a cohesive unit, play exciting football, I think play a brand of football with a level of player, unlike Norwich, who are going to be able to, I think, help Billy out a bit more. So I think that's a good move for them. It's not a good move for Chelsea, in my opinion, in the long term. But that's it. And these are the decisions that Tuchel was made, and people are kind of getting annoyed of questions of Thomas Tuchel, or questioning of what's going on at Chelsea at the moment. We have not started the season well. I don't think it's hyperbolic for people to turn around and be asking questions or be concerned about the performances. I don't think that is ridiculous. But also when you couple with the way we ended the season last year, I want to make this clear, Thomas Tuchel has done incredible things at Chelsea. And I believe he is a level of coach that could do more incredible things at Chelsea. But he's been backed. People last January were calling for Thomas Tuchel to be back before we had a change in ownership. He has been backed. With the players we've let go, like Romelu Lukaku, that was a massive vote of confidence, and others across the window, and the players that have been brought in as well. He now needs to show improvement. That's not me saying he has to win the league. I don't think we're going to win the league this season, and I would be stupid to demand that this season, I think, just based on my expectations of what I'm seeing with the squad. But I don't think it's unfair for people to have questions of what is a top coach like Thomas Tuchel, and just the attack, the midfield, some of the decisions that have been made, squad planning. Fans are allowed to have those questions, and it doesn't mean that just because you're criticising someone, you want them to be sacked. I mean, that's just, I'm already seeing on social media that turn, and it's not very nice. Listen, if we start playing well, you know what's going to happen. Thomas Tuchel will rightly, as his players, will start getting credit. That's the way it works. I think we'd all like to see a longer term sustainable vision of Chelsea with one coach. Let's hope, despite some criticism and chaos and feeling of uncertainty, this is the start of that journey effectively for Thomas Tuchel, and now he can get to work with the squad he wants. It is on him now, as it is on the players, to start showing improvement. As I say, I think there is talent there and potential there to be better. Those are my feelings on the transfer window. As I say, I think my analysis of this window is generally positive, and I think that most people would probably share that. I think if I was to lay out particularly the major transfers, a majority of them I would be happy with. I do have my questions on the final two, but overall I think I'm a bit happy with a window where Chelsea had to act. They did, and let's hope it'll be for the betterment of the squad and for Tuchel in the coming weeks and months. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.